What has happened in the last 10 years that created this new wave of a need for big box industrial product, followed by then the pullback?
E-commerce obviously increased, more packaged goods, more warehouses, more logistic companies needed. And then I think the second, the obvious, was COVID, because there was so much built up demand because things had been on pause for so long. And then when it came back on fire. When things are on fire, everybody's in, everybody's doing well. Things start to slow down and you weed out all the junk, and the folks that follow the fundamentals and the principles stay in. And some of the fundamentals and principles is dirt, location, demand.
What's the deal with data centers? Why is that the newest, hottest product that we hear about, but we might not see?
Yeah. Oh, it's a tough space. It's an expensive space. But I think the obvious answer to that is the AI. All of the AI technology that is coming, that's already here and that's growing so quickly. It's essentially a race to who can generate the most power, the most electricity for this AI technology, really between the United States and the rest of the world. And so that falls into real estate because it's all about the power that's available on these different land sites. And so you could have a traditional industrial warehouse and have access to power. And instead of having, traditional type industrial users like, third-party distribution companies or an Amazon, FedEx, or what have you, you end up having, one of these hyperscalers as your tenant, and they're essentially leasing power from you just within a brick and mortar space.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I was just on a phone call with a buddy of mine who was doing a report. He's a reporter. We're talking about big box industrial product. We're talking about the last 5 years, how there was, we'll say, last 5 to 10 years, a surge of industrial big box product that came to all of our markets.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing a bit of a pullback and lighter leasing velocity. From your experience, what has happened in the last 10 years that created this new wave of a need for big box industrial product, followed by then the pullback?
Yeah. Over the last decade, there's a lot of things that have occurred. But certainly when you have the increase on the e-commerce, obviously changing from brick and mortar, that was one of the reasons we frankly pivoted into the industrial space not too long ago. But we primarily had owned retail anchored shopping centers, and we had developed mainly retail. But we were looking at the sales every month. You get the sales reports from all your tenants, at least a good chunk of them. We're seeing the sales are starting to go down. And e-commerce was picking up at that time. And that was when there was all the question of whether brick and mortar was going to survive. Some of those major retailers that were going out of business. And that was during that time. And so e-commerce obviously increased, more packaged goods, more warehouses, more logistic companies needed, more distribution needed across the globe. So that was one thing that kicked up the industrial. And then I think the second, the obvious, was COVID. When COVID basically shut down the world, everybody was at home. Everybody's ordering goods. And then there was a stockpile too of demand where everything stopped for a while. And then when it came back on fire. And we were just explosive. You couldn't have an industrial deal that didn't make sense because there was so much built up demand because things had been on pause for so long. And I think now you see that tapering down. The tariff stuff, didn't help anything, but we felt that was going to be a momentary type situation. It seems to be panning out that way, hopefully. But at the end of the day, I think it's like anything else. When things are on fire, everybody's in, everybody's doing well. Things start to slow down and you weed out all the junk, and the folks that follow the fundamentals and the principles stay in. And some of the fundamentals and principles is dirt, location, demand. And we do not change our fundamentals or our principles no matter what, no matter how great the market is or if it's on a complete hold. And I think that's what's critical, regardless of what's going on out there, is to stick to the basics.
So you're a developer in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Interest rates are all over the place.
Mm.
You know, your debt market's all over the place. Your construction prices are all over the place. Property taxes aren't going down. Insurance, nuts. How are you underwriting deals?
Yeah. Well, we had some good practice over the last 5 years. I mean, interest rates were, I think the cap rate on a deal we had, I think literally in 3 quarters, we were underwriting it at the time at a 4.5 exit. And I think by the time 3 quarters went by, that thing had gone up to almost 6.5 or 7. There was such a switch from the boom of post-COVID to then things just stopping, you know, when we went through all the inflation and everything else. Well, essentially the recession. And I've never, ever seen a shift like that. And the prices on materials during the COVID situation for construction, I mean, just if you had deals you were underwriting at that time, I mean, whatever assumptions you made were completely out the door. And so those times were worse than now, in my opinion, in terms of the interest rates and escalating costs and everything else. But again, you ask how we underwrite. The same we did then is the same we do now. You have to make sure that you've got enough reserves in your deal to cover for unexpected circumstances. You've got to make sure that the exit cap that you're using is conservative and have a sensitivity where the deal makes sense, certainly on the high end, but you've got to look at it on the more conservative end as well. Same thing with your rents. You know, are you trending them or using what the rents are today? So we like to be extremely conservative with our models, and it's the only way that you can essentially account for all of the volatility that's going on. Make sure your reserves are, you know, really accounted for and up there, because you never know what's going to happen. And oftentimes something happens with development that you didn't expect. We were having this conversation today in our investment committee. And when deals that the guys are presenting or the gals are presenting bring it to us, we all have meet on investment. And it was a deal that we were looking at, and it's a good looking deal. But it is a lot of the assumptions being made are based on what we believe is coming in terms of the market. Well, if this development happens, and if this development happens, and if these rents start going the way we anticipate, we'll be able to get this exit cap. We'll be able to get this type of rent, you know, and it may very well go that direction, but that's not how we underwrite deals. If we have a development deal or an acquisition deal that we're looking at, that deal has to make sense right now based on today's cap rates, based on today's rents, and we have to have a lot of fat in there to cover for things going wrong.
Sure. There's a time and a place for pro formas, but not in my office. I don't love pro formas because for that very reason, it's like, let's work on today's realities and can we make this pencil now, as opposed to underwriting with 2022 rents and a dream. So, but
yeah,
I won't get it. Nick, thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate you making the time to chat with us. And for everybody listening, we'll see you next week.